I'm Kelly Wright, Senior White House Correspondent of CBN News, and I'm joined now by Gordon Chang. He is the author of a brand new book called Plan Red, China's Project to Destroy America. And Gordon is joining me now to talk to us about the nexus of Iran and the U.S.-Israeli attack on Iran and what that means in the wider sense of China's Plan Red. Gordon, good of you to join us. It's been a while since we've talked, and a lot has transpired over the past couple of weeks. We know that the United States, along with Israel, has gone into strike Iran. They have decapitated the regime. The son of the Ayatollah has been now chosen by the IRCG to lead the Iranian regime. Where does this square in terms of how the United States and Israel must really do all that it says that it's going to do, and that's to stop Iran from ever having a nuclear weapon?
Yeah, Iran has the components of a nuclear weapons program thanks largely to China. So, for instance, it's got its centrifuges through the AQ Khan black market network of Pakistan. But AQ Khan was really a paw for China because he was peddling Chinese technology. And of course, Beijing knew what he was doing. So one can say that the Iranian program is really sort of the Chinese program transplanted to the Gulf region. But Iran also has a lot of Chinese weapons. And inside of Iranian weapons, you have Chinese components, especially microchips that either were made in China or were sent to Iran through Chinese intermediaries. In other words, Chinese intermediaries buying stuff on the black market. Also, Iran's main terrorist proxies, Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthi militia, have large quantities. All of them have large quantities of Chinese weapons. So although the Iranians don't think of themselves as Chinese proxies, in effect, they are.
Gordon, you brought up so much in that explanation. And I want to go back to A.Q. Khan because many people have forgotten the role that he played so long ago. But I don't think too many Democrats and Republicans who were around then have forgotten. Do they need to be reminded of just how sinister China has been and Iran has been in eliminating or actually planning to eliminate Israel and the United States? Take me back to that moment to try to re-educate members of Congress who are divided on why the United States went in to conduct this strike with Israel.
This is an important time to do that because China is trying to convince the world that it is a responsible partner with regard to proliferation. And clearly, China has been the world's master proliferator of nuclear weapons technology, much of it to Iran. And it was not just the centrifuges, Kelly, it was also China's plans for warheads. So this really is a comprehensive program on the part of the Chinese regime to use the spread of that technology to accomplish its own goals. So the United States needed to take that out because the Iranians had a lot of highly enriched uranium at about 60%, not enough for a bomb, but very close to bomb grade purity. And also the other thing that we don't often talk about is that Iran had the components for North Korea's Hwasong-15 intercontinental ballistic missile, which has a range of about 12,000 kilometers, which means that if launched from Iranian soil, it could reach every square inch of the United States. So they were very close to having a nuclear weapon if they didn't have one already, plus also they have the means to deliver it. And that are a couple of the reasons why this was an important thing for the United States and Israel to do to make sure that the Iranian regime was defanged at this time.
And in order to do that, you have to strike when the opportunity has presented itself. And certainly the opportunity presented itself on the morning of February 28th when the Ayatollah Khamenei and his leadership decided they would have a Saturday morning meeting, which was proved to be fatal for them. But it shows the stunning arrogance that they had, to think that the United States and Israel, one, would not try to stop them from developing nuclear weapon, two, developing uranium enrichment, three, stopping its ballistic missile launches, and four, its threat to not only Israel, but to the United States. And even fifth, the Iranian people having the regime deal so brutally with the Iranian people who were asking for freedom that they haven't received in 47 years.
Yes, and we Americans don't like talking about evil, but that regime was evil, and we just saw a demonstration of that as the theocracy executed tens of thousands of Iranian people for doing nothing more than expressing their displeasure at the regime. So we have to understand what was at stake. Iran was, people say the world's number one sponsor of terrorism. I would say China actually is, because China was sponsoring Iran and other terrorist proxies. But the point is that it was extremely dangerous, and it was important for the United States, along with Israel, to take down that regime.
And Gordon, given that fact, as the President of the United States has presented it, as well as the Secretary of Defense and Secretary of State Marco Rubio, going back to January, at the start of this year, we were able to see the news that Nicolas Maduro, the dictator in charge of Venezuela, had been taken away along with his wife, brought here to the United States to stand trial. And that also helped the United States remove a threat within our own Western Hemisphere that was engineered by China and Iran.
Yes, I mean, China supported both the Chavez and Maduro regimes with elevated commodity purchases, which, by the way, they also supported the Iranian regime that way. And China invested a lot of money into Venezuela, lent something like $62 billion. Now, that outstanding balance is down somewhat because of the discounted oil sales to China, but still was substantial. And Venezuela hosted Chinese military officers there. And there is substantial evidence that Venezuela was fueling those caravans that were coming up through Central America into the United States during the Biden administration. That wasn't organic, Kelly. A lot of that was actually organized through Venezuela, through supposedly NGOs, but essentially with government backing. So this was an assault on our border. And it was an attempt to erode our sovereignty by eroding that border. So this was an attack on the United States, engineered by Venezuela, fueled by China.
Has China been put on its heels, or at least put on notice by the Trump administration, the Trump doctrine, with regard to how the president and the United States military has dealt with Venezuela, and now Iran, and ultimately, as the president has stated, Cuba?
Yes, and Cuba is that other dangerous regime in our hemisphere. The Chinese have at least 4 listening posts in Cuba, including they've taken over the Lourdes facility, which during the Cold War was the Soviet Union's largest listening post outside of its borders. Also, there are reports that are still unconfirmed that China has wanted to have its own military base in Cuba. But we know whether it has that base or not, its military presence on the island is substantial. We have seen with the taking down of the Maduro regime, essentially Venezuela is no longer supporting Cuba. And that means the Cuban regime itself right now has an energy crisis because it's not getting Venezuelan oil.
Gordon, if you're in the room where it happens and you were giving advice to the president and the administration, as well as Bibi Netanyahu, what would you urgently, or what would you express as the urgent need in terms of dealing with Iran, Cuba, China, Russia, North Korea, all of the BRICS nations?
The one thing I would say that this is a crucial time. Xi Jinping talks about going to war all the time. His favorite phrase is dare to fight. He wants to use his military to break apart his neighbors in a ring of countries from India in the south to South Korea in the north. We Americans, however, think that we're at peace. And although we're a far stronger society than China, we could lose our country because the Chinese are assaulting us and we're not defending ourselves with the vigor and the determination that is necessary. Just one example, and that is on January 31, Las Vegas SWAT and federal agents raided that home in Las Vegas where they found more than 1,000 vials of a substance or substances that was obviously causing people to become, quote unquote, deathly ill in that home. That was the second Chinese biological weapons facility found on American soil this decade. And I believe that there has to be at least a third that is now still unknown, presence unknown. So this was a mass casualty attempt on the United States. And so we have to understand that we're not at peace. And the president of the United States needs to talk to the American people about the situation that we're in. This is not peacetime.
Has he done that effectively enough? Because we see the vision on Capitol Hill, where Democrats and even some Republicans are challenging the president on the stance he has taken with regard to Venezuela, Iran, and the future of Cuba. So much so that they're actually stating that they will not fund the operations for the United States military in its operations in Iran.
The president has not done that. The American people are able to bear heavy burdens, but they will bear those burdens only if they believe that there is a cause and that there is a need to do that. You know, we're in peacetime, and this is not just Trump, it's also his predecessors. You know, when they waged war or they were engaged in military operations abroad, they told the American people, oh, don't worry, you can go about spending, be happy consumers. You know, and this most famously was George W. Bush during after the attack on the Pentagon, Shanksville, Pennsylvania, and New York City. But right now, we are at a point where the world is very close to global conflict. We have war in Europe. We have now war in the Gulf. We had a war between Pakistan and India in May of last year. North Africa is roiled by insurgencies that look like wars. We're at a very dangerous point. And the American people, I believe, need to understand that because they will make those sacrifices that are necessary to preserve our country and maintain peace and order in the world, but only if they realize what's at stake. And right now, the president of the United States has not done that.
You talked about the domestic threat just a few moments ago in regard to those biological vials that have been discovered in Las Vegas. Is there a threat that has been heightened because of the Iran war? We know that Iran has terror cells here. We know that China sent Chinese nationals through our southern border while the Biden administration was in control. There are threats here in the homeland, right? And how heightened should our security be to the point that we see something, say something?
Oh, absolutely. And the reason why the first Chinese biological facility was found, which was actually a weapons lab, that was because an alert building inspector in Reedley, California, saw a hose that was connected to a building that was supposed to have been abandoned. And inside, they found that weapons lab. Also, the Las Vegas home was found because a housekeeper was reporting that people inside that home were getting deathly ill. So this is see something, say something. But we know that there are problems across the country because there are those cells you talked about. There are Chinese cells, there are Iranian cells, and I'm sure there are Russian cells as well. We know that the Iranians have been here trying to assassinate Americans. President Trump, former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, other former senior State Department officials. So we know those attempts. So yes, we're alert. We've been warned of the danger. I'm not sure that we're alert.
Yeah, we have to be educated about that. The president is going to be visiting with Xi Jinping, as you know, in an upcoming trip to China. What will these two men have to discuss in terms of China's penchant for, or at least its appetite for disrupting its neighbors, including Taiwan, and even its threat to the United States in terms of trying to achieve economic dominance.
I think President Trump needs to say in no uncertain terms to the Chinese leader that the United States will defend Taiwan and we will defend ourselves and our friends and allies. Xi Jinping is really arrogant. And I think that through the end of last year, he actually believed that he could push President Trump around. That changed on January 3rd when Trump extracted Maduro and his wife from Caracas, and of course, with the attack on Iran. But this is still a very arrogant Chinese mentality right now that we're dealing with. And that means deterrence is broken down. President Trump needs to reestablish that. President Trump has to say things he doesn't want to say. But if he wants to maintain the peace, he's going to have to, I think, be explicit. And he needs to be explicit not only in private, but also in public as well, so the American people understand what's happening.
And China, as you know, it's been reported that they are now cracking down on their minorities, trying to make an ethnic unity, is what Xi Jinping is talking about. Yet we know under the surface, what he's really doing is trying to control the message from underground churches, people of faith. He's trying to bring everybody under a Chinese perceived way of religion and faith. It has to comply with the CCP and not with the ordinances of God. Talk to me about that in terms of what this plot is doing, because we already know that so many are being persecuted in China, not just of the Christian faith, but people who practice other faiths as well.
China has been trying to achieve what it calls unity, which means no religion, nothing but Communist Party thought. And this project has been intensified under Xi Jinping when he became General Party Secretary in the end of 2012, because this has been a top priority for him. And that has included campaigns of genocide against the Uyghurs. Now they've got to propose this new national unity law. This is just a further step. But we have also at this time witnessed an unprecedented assault on Christianity and indeed other faiths across China, because any faith is considered to be inimical to the Communist Party, which demands complete obedience and which demands acceptance of atheism.
Gordon, I know you've got a lot to do, but I'm talking to Gordon Chang. He is the author of Plan Red, China's project to destroy America. How will China try to do that? Will they continue to put out more propaganda to divide us and misinformation, disinformation? And will they try to strike us in the heart of our spiritual faith, which is to trust God? And, under one nation, we are blessed by God.
China's assault on us is comprehensive. They have this doctrine of unrestricted warfare, and it is unrestricted. So it includes an attack on faith. It includes infiltration of our political and other institutions. And we have seen cells of the Communist Party throughout the United States. We have seen Chinese institutions that they tried to transplant here. And one of the most recently talked about is the Chinese Students and Scholars Association, which the Chinese consular officials and Ministry of State Security agents use to monitor, coerce, and surveil Chinese students in our country. Kelly, we've known about this for decades, and presidents have not taken sufficient action to root out these institutions and these cells. And this is on us because this is our country. We have the right to do that. We have the ability to do it. We haven't done it. And the American people need to be angry at the Chinese, but they also need to demand from the political leaders, the leaders that they elected, to protect our country from these foreign elements that have infiltrated our society.
Gordon, I got to ask you a question. It's a spiritual one. What should the American people do in terms of their faith and exercise that to hold themselves accountable and responsible for praying for the growth of this nation, as well as praying for our leaders, that they get wisdom and that they apply godly wisdom to these earthly matters that are very sinister and deceptive. But as the Bible tells us, we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against powers and principalities in the air. Sometimes the weapons of our warfare are not carnal. And this is one of those cases. We can talk about all of the politics in the world, but we know that China is dead set against anything that represents God. You said it yourself. They want an atheistic nation. And we know that Iran is bent on bringing disaster to the world, believing that will bring the Mahdi to them. And this is really a very thorny issue that the church doesn't always want to talk about.
Yeah, we're Americans, so we're squeamish when we talk about evil, but we have to recognize that there's evil in the world and we've got to protect ourselves against it. And the most important thing that we can do is educating our children, because this is something, we see in younger generations a turning away from faith, and that is on us because we have not made sure that our children have learned from this from the very beginning. I mean, Bible instruction is absolutely critical, and it's not just Sunday school. It should be in the home every evening.
Mm, well said, my friend. What's your hope for America, Gordon?
I hope that we get through this half decade. If we get through the 2030, if we get to the 2030s, I feel a lot more comfortable about the way things will proceed. But this is, as they say, the decade of concern. So we have 4 more years. And this is going to be a time where we're going to have to make sure that we protect our country from foreign enemies that are determined to take us down.
Gordon, I appreciate you. I know I kept you longer, but thank you for your time. It's so valuable. Your insights are so trustworthy. Gordon Chang, he's the author of Plan Red, China's project to destroy America. And Gordon, thank you again for being on CBN News.
Kelly, can I just mention one other thing?
Absolutely.
And that is the power of prayer. My in-laws were in a car accident a little bit more than a year ago. And my mother-in-law, Lydia's mother, when she was lying in bed, said she could feel the power of people praying for her. And she healed remarkably fast. So I believe that the prayers do heal. And so I hope that everybody prays for their loved ones and for those who are sick, because this is not just prayer. This is healing. This is God's word working through ourselves. So please pray.
Amen. Amen. Especially the way you stated it. Please pray. And even for those Christians who are in the underground churches in China being persecuted and jailed, and even the Christians throughout Iran and out throughout the world, Nigeria and other parts of Africa. Gordon, appreciate you so much. Again, thank you. And we will pray.
Thank you, Kelly.
All right. Gordon Chang, right here as a guest on CBN News. Thank you again.